Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be conducting a couple mock drafts here on the channel, giving you guys my perspective and opinions as to how I approach my 2021 fantasy football draft. Now, today's episode is going to be different than the other mock drafts that I've conducted on the channel because I'm focusing on the matter of when rather than who. And what exactly that means is I don't want to go ahead and specifically focus on players that I like, because the players that you like and you think are going to potentially be upside guys in 2021 are all subjective. We don't know what the exact outcome is going to be going into our 2021 season. So I'd rather go ahead and focus on team construction and constructing the best overall fantasy roster on a positional basis, on a roundly basis, because that's what sets you up with far more success rather than going after specific players. Sure, if in fact you want a specific player like Saquon Barkley and you think he's going to be the number one overall running back this year, then go ahead and draft him. That's on you and that's your prerogative. My prerogative is setting you up with the best possible roster construction that's going to give you the most overall fantasy points. So who you select is not really what I care about. It's when you select those positions. And what matters in that specific scenario is, of course, the drop-off in production. We've talked about how volatile fantasy football landscape is, especially at the running back and tight end positions. Once the running back and tight end positions begin to thin out, we've seen year over year, of course, the drop-off in production is extremely volatile in comparison to the wide receiver position. So I wanted to go ahead and focus on specific drafts. I think we'll be conducting 4 today, 2 drafts for 12-team half PPR leagues, drafting in different positions. We'll do a 10-team full PPR league because I know a lot of you down in the comment section have asked for 10-team leagues. It's going to be the same concept, but then we'll go ahead and we'll do a 12-team full PPR league to give you guys my perspective there. But again, we are focusing mainly on draft construction of a roster rather than the players themselves, because again, there are hundreds of players to focus on. You can get any of the 120 potential wide receivers and throw them on your roster and maybe they pan out for you. But I wanted to go ahead and construct a roster that has the most potential for success in 2021 and gives me a distinct advantage over my other league mates. When they're investing in players far too early or far too late, it continues to pile on a lead in my direction that's going to be expanded and exploited going into our 2021 seasons. But before we begin today's video and go over the various strategies that I'm going to talk about, I want to go ahead and thank you guys for the incredible support once again. You guys have been awesome supporting the channel. Your viewership is all I ask for, so thank you very much. For those of you who have not yet already and have been watching this content, make sure you click that subscribe button. We're making fantasy football content for the entirety of the 2020 season. Again, everything related to off-season draft strategies, tier lists, strength of schedule, all that this offseason, going into the regular season where we'll, of course, be setting you up to win some 2021 fantasy football championships. For those of you who are looking to take the next step and gain an even greater advantage on your league mates, go down to the description of the video and check out my Patreon. Starting Monday, August 16, my draft guide will be live with, of course, my top 250 flex rankings, my half PPR, full PPR, positional rankings by tier, all of that, including my 2021 fantasy football draft guide, in which I talk about how I specifically go about the quarterback, tight end, running back, wide receiver positions, and give you guys my thought process going into 2021 at an even expansive basis. Again, this is just a video and we talk for about 15 minutes, but that draft guide pretty much encompasses my entire thought process going into the 2021 season. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and check that out. Again, draft guide is live this upcoming Monday, August 16th. Now that we've covered that, we can go ahead and begin talking about the different strategies that I have in terms of roster construction. Again, we're looking for when rather than who. When are we drafting running back? When are we drafting wide receiver, quarterback, tight end? Now, again, it all comes back down to the drop-off in production. And yes, the ball is flying towards you. Do not be afraid. I know some of you in the comment section said that it scared you last time. I've presented the drop-off in production on screen multiple times. And it's not by accident. We have shown you guys over the last couple mock drafts that, of course, the running back position, after that herd begins to thin out, it begins to disappear relatively quickly. Now, this is for a full PPR, kind of giving you the perspective as to how quickly the running back position really does deteriorate in comparison to the wide receiver position in terms of average overall productivity from wide receiver ones and wide receiver twos over the past 3 seasons. Now, of course, if I bring down this graphic and I go ahead and present the half PPR, though the drop off in production isn't as significant for the running back position between RB1s and RB2s, it is still as powerful in terms of as soon as those top 12 to 15 guys are gone, and you really are looking at running backs that aren't going to have as much upside, aren't getting unimpeded opportunities in their respective backfields, are splitting in RBBCs, are not getting the third down work because there are receiving backs on their respective teams, that is when we get into trouble. And that's exactly what I wanted to focus on, because the running back position in fantasy football has been king. There's a reason why going into our 2021 fantasy football drafts, 8 running backs are consecutively taken off the board regardless of scoring format, because everyone knows you need to draft running backs in order to win a fantasy football championship. Now, even now in 2021, with the running back position being more of a receiver than it has ever been in the history of the NFL, we still see a lot of value from the position. In comparisons from like 2002 to 2010, there were far more running backs that were getting extremes amount of opportunity in comparison to now. Like when I went back and looked at the prior decades, from 2002 to 2010, there were 75 running backs that had 300 rushing attempts in a singular year. In the last decade alone, we've only seen 19 players accomplish that. When I looked at running backs that had 400 plus touches from 2002 to 2010, there were 14 players. And in fact, 127 players that had over 320 touches. In comparison to the last decade, we've only seen 3 players surpass 400 touches in a year and 71 players surpass 320 touches in a year, which of course equals a workhorse back averaging about 20 touches per game on a 16-game basis. But that's not the point. The point is, running backs are king, and we have to respect them as such. And I wanted to go ahead and kind of give you a more expansive drop-off in production. To the right of me, you'll see the average drop-off in production from 2018 to 2020 for the top 18 tight ends, wide receivers, and running backs. And of course, I'm going to have to look up because it's on my second monitor, but just to kind of give you some perspective, okay, the number 1 tight end for the last 3 seasons, on average, has scored 236.39 fantasy points. Now, it's a little bit easier to explain because Travis Kelce has finished as the number 1 tight end for 3 consecutive seasons. So I went ahead and compiled all 3 of his total seasonal statistics and found that that was his seasonal average. Now, if you go to the wide receiver position and look at the number 1, they averaged 297.17. That fantasy total was contributed by Michael Thomas in 2019, Tyreek Hill in 2018, and of course, most recently, Devontae Adams in 2020. You went and got all 3 of their total productions in terms of fantasy points in a half PPR basis, found the average, and that is the average for the number 1 wide receiver as of the last 3 seasons. So I went ahead, expanded that to a top 18 list because I wanted to go ahead and to demonstrate just how quickly the running back and tight end position begin to fall off. I mean, it only takes 18 players at the running back position on average to have seen more than a 50% drop off in production. I mean, for the tight end position, of course, that happens far more quickly as it only takes 10 positions to get to that point. But as of the last 3 seasons, those 2 positions have been the most volatile, while the wide receiver position stands on its 2 legs and is viable throughout the first 8 rounds potentially in every fantasy draft, regardless of scoring format. If you're playing in a full PPR, it even makes it that much more viable. So just to kind of give you some perspective, I wanted to show that drop off in production specifically by a percentage basis and a fantasy point average basis, because again, when we are approaching our drafts, I see a lot of people investing in wide receiver in those early 2 rounds, when I honestly think the running back position that has been king in fantasy football and has won many of us championships year over year needs to be continued to be focused on. Now that we've covered that, we can go ahead and move on to some mock drafts. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier on the episode, I'm going to be conducting 4 mock drafts, 2 of them for 12-team half PPR leagues and 2 of them for full PPR leagues, 1 10-team and 1 12-team, just to kind of give you guys some perspective, and for those of you who are asking for it down in the comment section. For our first draft, of course, as you can see on the top left, it is a 12-team half PPR format. I'm going to be selecting from the number 5 spot. It doesn't matter who I'm drafting, it matters when, because again, the subjectivity of who you believe is going to have a higher overall productive season is up to you. Of course, you can follow my information and do as such, but at the end of the day, when you are drafting, it is your decisions to be made and who you believe is going to have the highest upside or potential ceiling this upcoming season. So let's go ahead and begin here. I'm going to have to pause every time it gets to my selection, but we'll just go ahead and begin the draft accordingly. So we'll go ahead and pause it here. It is my selection at the 1.5 position. It doesn't matter who I'm drafting. It matters when and what position I'm drafting. I'm drafting running back, without a doubt in my mind, because if I don't draft running back right now, it's probably going to come back to me, and the best available running back is going to be the 12th overall guy, and which we've seen on average with the drop-off production as of the last 3 seasons is a 200-point running back. I'm not interested in drafting that. If anything, I want guys that are going to give me production every single week. I'm drafting Ezekiel Elliott, and I'm letting the draft go down. And hopefully, some of these teams are going to select tight end, wide receiver, and go ahead and give me the potential of a running back returning back to me that is going to allow me to double stack up on running back. Because if, in fact, I am not investing in running backs early, I'm going to be in trouble for the rest of my draft. So we'll go ahead and pause once again here. My second round selection has arrived. What am I looking for? I'm looking for running backs. Now, of course, I don't want a quarterback because it's significantly too early. I'm not looking to draft a Patrick Mahomes in the second round unless I'm playing in a 2 QB league. Wide receivers. Already the top 6 are off the board. Everything after this is pretty much going to be volatile. We see it year over year. The wide receiver position has so much turnover in terms of guys that make it for one season and then they're gone the following season because consistency is not always there at the wide receiver position. There's a lot of volatility there and, of course, a lot of injuries that take place. Tight end position. I absolutely believe that there's going to be a potential for me taking a tight end, whether it's in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th round, and I can get myself value there instead of having to potentially reach for a tight end at this moment in time. I can go ahead, draft my running back who is going to give me the stability that I need to go ahead and just not have to worry about running back for the rest of this draft. I'll go ahead and take my Najee Harris here. I'll resume the draft and let it go down the line and just see exactly what happens. Again, Patrick Mahomes coming off the board relatively early. The running back position still coming off the board quickly. And now we've returned back to my position. Like I mentioned earlier, I didn't want to invest in tight end early, but in the 3rd round, it's an automatic in my eyes. I see Darren Waller as my 2nd overall tight end this upcoming season. The fact that I can get him in the 3rd round, a guy that is potentially going to continue to grow upon his production. He scored 225 points last year. But again, it's not a matter of who I'm drafting, it's a matter of what I'm drafting. I believe the tight end position, based on the drop-off in production that we've seen over the last 3 seasons on average, has been so significant that if in fact I'm not selecting this tight end position here, I'm in fact doing myself a disservice. I need to invest in tight end here because if in fact I wait for the 4th round to come around or 5th round to come around and I want to invest in tight end, I'm potentially going to see a 75-point drop-off in production based on averages. And the difference between drafting a tight end now and in the next couple rounds, that's 75 points. You'll never see that kind of drop off in production at any other position from here on forward because the running back position has already disappeared. The wide receiver position is going to consistently stay afloat. And maybe the quarterback position will see an even steeper drop off. But again, we're not investing in quarterbacks yet. We're waiting. So now we can go ahead and let this draft resume and talk about what we're looking for. Again, it's the wide receiver position. I've talked about it already to an extent. The wide receiver position has so much depth already that I can go ahead, wait till the 4th round and select a player that could eventually finish as a top 12 wide receiver this upcoming season. Now, let's go ahead and pause here. Let's see what's available. It doesn't matter who, it's a matter of the position and when I'm going to be drafting them. I'm looking for wide receiver. Great. Robert Woods. Before we resume it and let it go back down, again, we've already addressed 2 running backs. I'm confident with the position. I've already addressed my tight end, which I won't have to potentially draft once again until we get to about like the 13th, 14th round where I'll be drafting a sleeper. And then, of course, we have our number 1 wide receiver. We could look to go quarterback or go wide receiver once again. That's what we're looking for here on the turn. Again, the wide receiver position is probably going to come off the board along with quarterbacks, and that's just going to make my decision that much harder. But we're not looking for who, we're looking for when and what. We're looking for a wide receiver at this current moment in time. I think I can go ahead and wait on quarterback based on how much value there is and how much depth there is at the position currently. So when I look at the board, of course, it doesn't matter who I'm drafting. Of course, I'm going to grab the guy that I like the most. But again, it's not a matter of who I'm drafting. It's a matter of when. So we'll go ahead and resume it. And when the draft comes back down to me, of course, the quarterback position is going to be something that I'm looking towards because there's so much value at the position. Herbert and Wilson came off the board because, again, I went for my wide receiver position because I knew how much depth there was going to be potentially when it came back to me at the quarterback position. We'll go ahead and pause here and look at it accordingly. The quarterback position is not a bad selection here. We still have Dak Prescott on this board. We have Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Jalen Hurts, and there is still great talent across the board. Matthew Stafford, Ryan Tannehill, guys that are undervalued in my opinion, but all these guys that are remaining are still top 12, and I can continue to wait on this position and go ahead and address my third wide receiver selection, or go ahead and address another running back selection if I want to. But as of right now, I like the idea of going for another wide receiver. We'll invest into a Brandon Ayuk. When it comes back down around, we can go ahead and grab a quarterback accordingly. We'll go ahead and resume it here and let the draft go down. Again, we selected a wide receiver because the wide receiver position does begin to thin out, but selecting a wide receiver 3 that is a confident choice there is all part of the plan, but mainly because there were other quarterbacks on board that I was, very comfortable selecting, because I don't think there's that great of a drop off from a Dak Prescott to one of the following remaining quarterbacks like an Aaron Rodgers, a Tom Brady, Jalen Hurts. But I still want to go ahead, look at the running back position. If I wanted to, I could invest in quarterback here and be perfectly fine. But because I've seen so many quarterbacks already taken, why not go ahead and select the running back, build a team that is just a little bit more stable, and then draft a quarterback like a Ryan Tannehill that's being unbelievably undervalued everywhere I see it this season. So we're just going to let the draft run. Of course, we're specifically looking for Ryan Tannehill. So when Brady and Rodgers come off the board, I'm not worried about that. Jalen Hurts, that's fine. We'll go ahead. We'll come over here. We'll select the player. We're looking at quarterback. We're selecting Ryan Tannehill, and we're done there. We'll let the draft go back down, and of course, return to us another quarterback taken. I'm glad I got the one that I wanted, but it's a matter of when I'm drafting the quarterback. Let's go ahead and just have a little bit of a quick review of this team. We already have 2 running backs that, in my opinion, are going to be top 12. The number 2 overall tight end, in my opinion, 3 wide receivers that are going to be, at very least, wide receiver 2s with upside. So I've gone ahead and I've addressed my core positions with talent that, in my opinion, based on drop-off in production, are going to give me the best potential for overall success. Now, of course, on top of that, once we get into that 7th round, it's about adding more depth to your lineup, but also adding positions of need, because eventually the running back position will disappear to the point where I won't even have a flex play there unless I go ahead and select. So I went ahead and invest into a player. We go ahead and pick up Ryan Tannehill before, again, he's taken by one of these other teams that didn't have a quarterback. But we invested late in quarterback because the value of said quarterback, who finished within the top 10 last year, is being extremely undervalued by a majority of the landscape. So we go ahead, get a discount at quarterback, address the rest of our positions, and we've set ourselves up for success, in my opinion. From here on forth, we're of course going to be building continuous, depth with wide receivers, handcuffs, extra tight end depth, because if in fact we get a tight end later in our draft in like the 12th round, like an Irv Smith, if we select this Irv Smith and he ends up being a tight end 1, I can use him as a trading piece later on in the season in conjunction with another player, another running back or a wide receiver, to get an upgrade at a position of need. So again, those are the thought processes of this specific draft. We'll go ahead and move on to a different selection in a different position as of right now. All right, we're going to go ahead and hop into a 12-team full PPR draft, selecting from the number 8th spot. So we'll go ahead and start it here and just let the draft come to us. Again, this is full PPR, so the draft selections may be different, and the wide receiver position may be coveted a little bit highly by the other teams in this league. But we'll go ahead and pause it, and again, we're making another selection. Luckily for me, though, the player of need. Again, I'm looking for running back. Let's go ahead. Let's make the selection. It's not a matter of who, but a matter of what position I'm looking for. I'm looking for running back there. I'm also, once again, coming back down in this second round, looking for another running back. We go to select player. Of the available choices, there are a lot of good ones. I'm going to make the exact same selection I made last draft. Interestingly enough, I was able to get Zeke and Harris at 1.825 in comparison to 1.528, which is interesting. But now what are we looking for in the 3rd round? If there is a tight end that's going to fall to me, I'm absolutely going to select them. But in this specific case, it did not happen. So we're looking for wide receiver. We'll go ahead and pause this draft and go into this position, selecting a player at the wide receiver position that, in my opinion, gives me the most potential for success. I think that's Terry McLaurin. We'll go ahead and invest there and then resume the draft. As it comes back down around, we're looking for also wide receiver and running back, because the running back position going into this 4th round, considering where I'm sitting in this draft, still does have value. We'll go ahead and pause here, go into the potential selections, and what we see, of course, is a couple tight end selections: Hawkinson, Andrews, Pitts. I think I can get that in the 5th round, so we'll wait accordingly. Wide receiver position, a lot of studs: CeeDee Lamb, Chris Godwin, a lot of players that I like, or I potentially go with Darrell Henderson. Because I've already addressed my 2 running back positions, I can go Darrell Henderson here, but I don't need to. I'll go ahead. I'll select a CeeDee Lamb at this moment. Again, we are highly invested in the NFC East, but it's not a matter of who I'm drafting. It's a matter of when and what position I'm drafting. We'll go ahead and resume, let the draft go back down. Like I mentioned, we're looking for tight end when it comes back down to me in the 5th. I'm specifically looking for a TJ Hawkinson in the PPR format, but whether I get him or not is it's irrelevant. I don't care if I get him. I just need the tight end. Interestingly enough, the position has come down to me. I'm going to be taking my tight end selection of choice. We'll go ahead and resume the draft and see what returns to me in the 6th round after this turn. Again, we're looking at the quarterback position and or a wide receiver that we can invest in for this upcoming round. Justin Herbert comes off the board, Myles Gaskin there. We'll go ahead and pause this draft and set it up accordingly. What is available? I'll take myself Deontay Johnson and or Russell Wilson. Between the two, again, I'm always about grabbing depth at the quarterback position and waiting for those lower end kind of guys. I'll take a Deontay Johnson here in the 6th round, a lot later than I anticipated getting him. We'll resume the draft. But now, of course, we're looking for quarterback and or a running back in the 7th round. The quarterback position will probably come and go as of right now, and that's fine. Because again, we're willing to wait. We're willing to invest later in our draft. And I know that the 4 selections on the other side of me have already taken quarterback, so I don't have to immediately address it right now. So we'll go ahead. We'll hop into this position. We'll see what's available. I like Melvin Gordon a lot, so that's exactly what we'll do. We'll grab a flex play here. Resume the, not draft settings. We'll resume the draft accordingly and just let it kind of move down. And as it returns to me, this is probably a position, especially when there's not a lot of quarterbacks selected on the other side of this draft, in which I will be selecting a quarterback. So we'll go ahead, we'll pause this draft. And of the available remaining quarterbacks, of course, Ryan Tannehill is still down here on the list. Who I select in this specific position is all subjective. I like Ryan Tannehill a lot this upcoming season, so we'll go ahead and resume the draft and let it return down the line. But again, similar to our last draft, we're building our roster in the same context. We're trying to draft running backs early, stack up on wide receivers in the middle round, make sure that we secure a quarterback and a wide receiver of our liking, specifically ones that aren't going to leave us in very disadvantageous positions throughout the season. And we've gone ahead and already built a lineup that I like once again, regardless of the scoring format. So now we can go ahead and move on to another type of draft. We'll hop into a 10-team full PPR as of right now. For this 10-team PPR, I'm going to be selecting from the 1.1. We'll go ahead and start this draft. So the selection I'm making is obvious. I'm looking for running back, but Christian McCaffrey makes that job a lot easier. We'll let this draft come down and around, but in the 2nd round, when I'm sitting at the turn, because I have back-to-back selections, it makes it that much easier for me to go ahead, select the running back, follow it up with a tight end that I like, and then just let the draft move. So we'll go ahead, pause it here. My selections are not a matter of who, but a matter of what position. I like tight end. We'll take it there. And it's still paused for me. Perfect. We'll go to the running back position of the best available. I like Antonio Gibson. We'll let the draft kind of roll around. This is mainly where I'm looking for wide receiver. Again, the running back position has come and gone, but as we can see on the screen as of right now, there are still a lot of available wide receivers that are studs. Guys that in the prior drafts that, of course, I selected are still on this board, and they're probably going to be guys that I'm going to go back-to-back with. In order to prove a point, I want to go ahead and even invest in a running back and wide receiver here, stacking them on 3 running backs because I can. In a 10-team league in comparison to a 12-team league, there's far more depth that falls to you, and especially considering I'm sitting at the turn, I can go ahead and wait. So if I can take a CD Lamb here and follow it up by grabbing my 3rd running back far and away right now, I think I can set myself up with a pretty good overall lineup, because the wide receiver position in round 6 and 7 are going to be nice. I could probably even go 1 wide receiver in 6 and a quarterback in 7, but like I've done all day long, I'm waiting on my quarterbacks. I don't want to go ahead and jump too early on them because I know there's a lot of depth to be had later in this draft. We go ahead and we'll pause it here. Look at what is available at the wide receiver position. I will take Tyler Lockett. I will follow that selection up with my 3rd wide receiver, my starting wide receiver, Deontay Johnson. Here again, a matter of what position I'm drafting rather than who. But now we're waiting for the quarterback. The quarterback is pretty much going to lock this lineup into place. We've already addressed 3 running backs, a tight end, and 3 wide receivers, all of which I am very confident with going into 2021. And though I'm getting a discount at the quarterback position, I'm only able to do this because, again, I really do like Ryan Tannehill. We'll take a Tom Brady here just to kind of deviate from the Ryan Tannehill streak that I've been on. And when I look at these other positions, wide receiver, tight end, running back, I still see some depth pieces that I can make selections for. Because it's a full PPR, I can go ahead this time around. We'll take a Robbie Anderson here, and we'll let the draft resume. But by the time it comes back, it's going to just be, of course, another bunch of depth positions coming off the board a little bit earlier than usual, mainly because of the fact that this is a little bit of a smaller league, so the depth isn't going to be as brutal in the 10th round, when typically 10th round is where handcuffs are taken. This time around, there are still starting running backs like Damian Harris, David Johnson, James Conner coming off the board accordingly. But again, when we look at the team's roster construction, 3 running backs, a tight end, 4 wide receivers, and a quarterback. This is what I'm talking about, guys. I'm waiting on wide receivers. I'm prioritizing tight ends and running backs, and I'm building teams that I like. Let's go ahead and hop into our final mock draft for today. I just realized that I was sitting right in front of the 1.1 selections of last round. My apologies in advance. In order to kind of, I guess, fix it, I'm just going to be selecting from the complete opposite side of this draft. I'll be selecting from 1.12 for our final mock draft today, 12-team half PPR. We'll go ahead and start it. We're looking for double running backs. That is what I want. I'm not interested in wide receivers. I'm going to select my double running backs, and then I'm going to go ahead and build my roster accordingly after that. What has fallen to me? Of course, a tight end is here. Now, this makes it a little bit of an interesting selection. If I go ahead and select, we have good running backs in the choices of Najee Harris and Austin Eckler, or I could go tight end with Travis Kelce. But unfortunately, I'm legitimately afraid of the running back position being a shell of itself when it comes back to me in the third, because I've done enough drafts to know that it is going to be a shell of itself. It's not going to look like anything that it is right now. These players will be gone, and the value at running back will have disappeared by the time the third round comes around to me, and I'm not willing to potentially invest in those players at that current moment. I'll wait on tight end. I'll select wide receiver in my 3rd/4th round, wait for the tight end potentially to come back in the 5th, which is my hope as of this current moment in time. We look at the available players at wide receiver who we're, of course, investing in. We'll take a Julio Jones there in the 3rd round, which I think is a great investment, and we'll follow that up with a Robert Woods. We'll let the draft go back down, and hopefully the tight end position returns to us. If it does not, and if in case it doesn't in your specific draft, that's fine. You shouldn't panic. There is still going to be depth to be had at the tight end position. You're just going to have to wait on it. You don't want to overdraft positions, and if in fact I'm sitting in a position where, you see the tight end position just completely gets evaporated, that's fine. I'm okay with that, and that's exactly how we'll react to it. So when we look at what's available at running back, again, I'm still not interested. I like the wide receivers here. We'll take ourselves to Tyler Lockett. And now is when we go ahead and start burning teams based on the quarterback selection we make. You can make any of these guys your starting quarterback. It's completely up to you. But I'll take my Dak here at the 6.1 and then wait and see what we can get in the 7th, 8th, 9th round. Maybe even wait longer for a tight end in the 10th. The way I see it currently, unless you are so confident in a tight end in the middle range that you are going to solidify they're going to be a top 5 guy at the position, I don't think it's worth taking until potentially the double-digit rounds, which we'll kind of show you right now. We'll go ahead and try to make a investment in a wide receiver that has upside. I'll take a Jerry Jeudy here. Now, our next selection is probably the game changer. I think this is what definitively kind of determines how our draft is going to be looked at in terms of whether it's going to be successful or not this upcoming season. The 8.1 here, based on what I select here, it pretty much structures my whole team. Do I go running back and try to go for an upside play and hope that the guy that I select pans out, or do I go for a tight end? The question in my mind is, when I go and look at the tight end position and see, and I go and I see who's available. Noah Fant, Logan Thomas, Mike Gesicki, Robert Tonyan, Tyler Higbee. Can any of those guys be so significantly great this upcoming season that they'll somehow surpass the other guys that were selected and be a top 5 player at the position? If they are, and they can end up putting up 160, 170 points this upcoming season, they're a great investment. But when I look at the potential of the upcoming running backs, and I see players like, let's say, for example, Zach Moss, Michael Carter, James Conner, 3 guys that I like a lot this upcoming season. 3 guys that could very easily be the lead running backs for their teams and see upwards of 200 carries and maybe even 6 to 8 touchdowns this upcoming year. When I look at the 2 opportunities, grabbing a tight end now and hoping they have upside, or grabbing a running back now and hoping they have upside, I think the running back position, if I don't select it here, there is a very good chance that as it comes back around, there's not going to be a running back that I can grab that has this kind of potential upside. So right now, I know Zach Moss is dealing with an injury, but the entire prospect is grabbing a running back, not a matter of who, but what. I'm grabbing a running back that has potential upside. So we'll grab here our Zach Moss, we'll resume the draft, we'll let it come back around, and we'll go ahead and wait a little bit and invest in tight end. I'm willing to reach on tight end, but only for guys that I, think are going to be that next level. But also, I could probably wait, considering almost every team in this draft has already selected their tight end. But let's go ahead and pause here and just kind of give you an idea of the construction here. We've already selected 3 running backs, 4 wide receivers, and a quarterback. When we look at what's available at the tight end position, where I'm specifically looking is sleepers. Trotman, Smith, where's even Ferksker? He's so far down this list, no one's paying attention or paying respects. I can wait. There's a lot of talent here. Perhaps Irv Smith comes off the board, but I can still wait at this point. Go ahead, build more depth. Give me an Antonio Brown. I'll take that. The wide receiver 3 on his team, but Brady loves his Antonio Brown. That's a certainty. And after selecting an Antonio Brown, I could go ahead and grab another running back flyer, but I've done that. I've invested and I've already kind of determined, Zach Moss is going to be the guy I'm taking the risk on. I want to go ahead and draft the tight end that I want of choice, because if in fact that tight end does not return to me, I'm going to be in a little bit of trouble the following round. So we waited on tight end this time around. And though it's difficult to kind of execute this at a later part of the draft because it doesn't look as sexy, it's still as efficient as any of the other rosters that I've drafted today, based on the construction of the roster and setting ourselves up with as many advantages as we possibly can. So hopefully this kind of gives you some perspective as to how I'm going to be approaching my drafts this upcoming season. I appreciate you guys spending your time here today all the way until the end of the video. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, do not forget to click the like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you have not yet already. We're making 2020 fantasy football content for the entirety of the season. So make sure you click that like button. Join the community by clicking subscribe. Make sure that bell notification button is on so you know when my latest video is dropped. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for watching. Let me know down in the comment section what you guys think of this approach going into our 2021 fantasy football seasons, and what approaches have helped you in your respective drafts. What have you been able to do year over year that has helped you win against your league? Share it with the rest of the community, because I'm sure everybody wants to know. Thank you everybody for watching, and until tomorrow, I'll see you guys. Peace.